Welcome to everyone joining us. We'll just take a couple moments for people to join and then we'll get the presentation started.
Megan?
Yes.
It's June Lunn signing in, and I had asked Shannon Simmons, would you let her in? She's got the number. Oh, she's in now, thank you.
Okay, we'll take about one more minute and then we shall get started. All right. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining the STEGH Foundation's second virtual STEGH Talk session. Some quick housekeeping before we begin. Because we have such a large group attending today, we're going to be muting everyone except for Megan. If you have any questions during our presentation, please type them into the chat field and we will try to answer as many questions as we can during the Q&A. And this session will be recorded and shared at a later date on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. I would now like to introduce the STEGH Foundation Board President, Judy Thorner, who will introduce today's special guest.
Good evening, everyone. And on behalf of the St. Thomas Elgin General Hospital Foundation's Board of Directors and staff, welcome and thank you for joining us tonight for our second STEGH Talks virtual session. Tonight's topic is There's No Mask for Mental Health. It is my pleasure to introduce Megan Armstrong, a registered social worker at STEGH who works within Outpatient Mental Health as a mental health and addictions clinician. In 2013, Megan graduated from the University of Windsor's social work program. Since then, she's worked for the Maplehurst Correctional Complex and Addiction Services of Thames Valley. Following the completion of her master's in 2018, Megan has continued to improve her role in mental health and is currently in the process of certification in attachment therapy. Megan also has training and interest in addictions, concurrent disorders, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Today, she will be speaking about the pandemic's impact on mental health, as well as STEGH's response to the mental health needs in our community. Welcome, Megan.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Judy. And also thank you so much for the STEGH Foundation for having me here tonight. I will try to not rush through the presentation because I tend to get a little bit excited when it comes to talking about mental health. So I will try to slow down my speech. I feel like everything has changed so much within the past, I would say like 13 months or so. Pre-pandemic me just feels like a completely different person. We've had to do things completely different than we've ever thought we've had to before. It's a whole different world, including for those of us in mental health. So I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of what we've done in terms of how we've modified our services, the kind of things that we've seen sort of within the last year, as well as things that are continuing to happen within mental health. So I found that this quote was super relevant in terms of everything that's been happening. The only constant in life is change. So basically, the only thing that we can guarantee right now is the fact that everything will be constantly changing for us. So pre-pandemic, it was a whole different world. We saw people in person. People came into hospital for their services. We had a variety of different lovely services offered right in office. People came in for drop-in groups. We could see 12 people jammed into a room. Yes, that's right, sitting side by side, nearly touching, everyone in one room. We offered drop-in groups. We had a variety of groups depending on what clients were looking for in terms of their own treatment goals. In-person services were great because it wasn't really that challenging to pick up on body language. And we could also observe how people interacted with one another in groups. So there wasn't necessarily just the work I would do with clients. It would also be the work that would be done between people. So just in that interaction process, I mean, if you've been familiar with groups before, you kind of know how that works out. However, in spring of 2020, everything changed for us. We couldn't meet in person anymore. So it was basically like everything we'd been trained for was just thrown out the window. We had to abruptly cancel our groups, and we were moving to a telephone-based program for individual therapy. We didn't have the infrastructure yet at this point in time to do virtual sessions. So a lot of the therapeutic work that we were trying to do with clients simply didn't translate. So for example, an area where I might be sitting in office and allow space for a therapeutic pause. So I might say something and then I'd kind of wait for that client to respond. Now, because it was on the phone, it was like, hello, are you still there? Hello? So there wasn't really that room for that pause. I also couldn't observe things that I would need to observe in terms of what kind of symptoms somebody might be struggling with. So we had to adjust quickly. However, at this point in time, we thought it was really temporary. We didn't think this would be continuing on past I think it was 2 weeks. Well, a year and a half later, we know how wrong that was. I feel like 2020, Megan was so naive at that point. By summer of 2020, we realized it really wasn't temporary anymore. We'd been doing this for a few months. At this point in time, we really were thinking, okay, we got to figure this stuff out. We had to move quickly to get up and running in terms of our virtual counseling, which meant adapting to new technology and sort of all the hiccups about that. So people on our team were coaching each other to get accustomed to this new way of delivering services, also becoming self-imposed tech support for all of our clients. As the millennial of the outpatient mental health team, it often meant me as well doing that tech support, which is a tiny little nightmare, but we did what we could. Also, staff were picking up on the services really, really quick, and they were supporting everybody else, including clients. So services including, like I might call somebody for a group and also offer a little bit of a check-in to get them situated with our new services. Just like a 5-minute, like I'll open up the window, we'll make sure that you've got the technology set up. So by fall and winter of 2020, we'd become accustomed to the virtual life. We were starting to notice more themes of the client experiences. By this point, we were seeing the impact that the service provisions were having on our clients. When we normally would have the relief of a holiday or a break, time away with friends and family, we didn't get the rest that our bodies wanted. And this isn't necessarily just for our staff, it's also for our clients, right? Because we're seeing community members. So at this point in time, it's April of 2021. We know a lot more, but we're still always adapting and adjusting our programming. So we're seeing that virtual services are pretty much going to be here to stay. Likely, we're probably going to have a hybrid of services offered when we are actually able to see clients in person again. So it's one of those, it's really great because we can reach out to people who might not necessarily be able to come into our office. That the Elgin County area is massive, and sometimes people might be driving up to 45 minutes to come in and see me for an hour. And I mean, if we're seeing each other a lot, maybe it's more ideal for someone to be actually meeting virtually. Some people have issues around childcare, other transportation issues, employment. We see people on their breaks. We see people on lunch hours. There might be an issue, say, oh, hey, I don't get home from work until 3:30. Me, myself, I end at 4. So now it's like, actually, I'm just going to sit in the break room and see you. So in terms of like, as long as someone is able to have a confidential area to meet, then we can basically meet with people anywhere. If you've got a smartphone or a computer, we're there for you. So some of my clients want to stay out of hospital for a variety of reasons. Some of my clients are more immunocompromised and they don't want to come into hospital. So for this, it's really, we're just meeting with them in their own living room. If someone has any sort of issues around actually accommodations to get in, that, I mean, we can accommodate for that as well. As well as, I mean, this does still happen. I do see stigma quite a bit in terms of coming in for services. So some people who maybe have never accessed mental health in the past, and they're just worried about coming up to the 3rd floor at STEGH, they love how confidential the virtual model is. So some of you may have seen this. I know this was passed around social media quite a bit. I saw it on LinkedIn. I shared it myself on LinkedIn. So basically, we've counseled people through everything. When I was in school, I would read about pandemic in textbooks. And I really did remember thinking, that is literally never going to happen to me. That's not my concern area. Again, that Megan was so naive because now we're in this and we've been in this for about 1.5 years and we know how much that's wrong. So this graphic is so accurate in terms of how we've really had to rise to the occasion. We've had to modify and figure stuff out on the go. And I mean, as a social worker who's working as a therapist, I can really only speak to who I am and what I do. But I do know that basically across the board, people are having to do stuff that they never thought they'd have to do before. People have a lot of transferable skills, so people are doing better than they think they are. However, this basically is applying to all of us. Really, you can just swap in your own profession there and see how it's applying to you as well. So it's a really surreal thing as well, because clients are sharing, hey, you know, I'm actually not doing too well. And your therapist is sitting on the other side of the computer saying, yeah, dude, I'm not doing well either. Like, this is something that we're experiencing this in the same. So their fears are our fears. Their triggers are our triggers. It's not something we can escape. Everything about our life has changed due to pandemic. Unless you've somehow found the fountain of youth, in which case I'd love to chat afterwards, please give me a call. But you've never been through a pandemic before. So this is brand new to all of us. I think unless you're actually great at everything first time, which I doubt it, we're newbies here. It's just a good idea to be nice to yourself. So some of my clients will refer to this as like the best friend technique. So really, like, at the end of the day, all we have is ourselves and our thoughts. So we really need to be kind to ourselves. I think I posted online, if we had a friend that spoke to ourselves the way we sometimes speak to ourselves, how long would you allow that person to be your friend? So if you're saying negative things to your head and being judgmental about your experiences through pandemic, just remember that. So if anyone's ever heard of Brene Brown, so a lot of my friends in the mental health field or in, you know, social work, etc., do you know who Brene Brown is? So she is a social worker and she refers to it as the FFT. So she calls it their freaking first times. So basically, let go of the judgment that you're having about yourself. Let go of the judgment that you're having for other people. I truly do think that everyone is coping to the best of their abilities. It's that whole when you know better, you do better. I've even had to relax some of my like, oh, what is this person doing or what is that person doing? Everyone is doing the best they can. We've lost our predictive capacity, so we no longer can predict things quite like we could before. It's important to just lower your expectations and help others with their own. So basically, if your expectations are low, I'm just going to go ahead and lower them just a little bit further. Our own self-care is just as important. I know this is a really cliched therapeutic topic. I'm not talking about like lighting some candles and pouring yourself a bubble bath. Self-care is literally all of those things that you need to do to care for yourself as a human. So based on our levels of stress and anxiety, the stuff that we normally would do to take care of ourselves isn't going to cut it anymore. So it's going to look different to each person. We need to look at it across all areas of your life. So going back to the basics. So for example, for someone who might be working all day, have you had a bathroom break within the last 3-4 hours? Probably a good idea to go ahead and do that now. Are you eating enough? Are you sleeping properly? Are you hydrating yourself? Because the thing is, when stress creeps in and impacts us, chances are you're not doing those things very well. And I mean, the thing like watching a movie or calling a friend might not cut it quite the way it was because we need to return to our basics. Hopefully that makes sense. I've also been reading a lot about the PRN model. So in terms of self-care, they refer to it as pause, nourish, or pause, reset, and nourish. So these are things basically in terms of caring for yourself. Take a moment for yourself, so that's the pause. Reset, so just consider, okay, let's just shake it off for the day. And then nourish. So I don't necessarily mean, have something to eat, although very important, making sure that you're feeding yourself appropriately. But whatever kind of nourishes your spirit, whatever nourishes that social element you're looking for, all of those factors. The biggest thing about 2020 is, I think in general, many people have not done anything virtual. I think for a lot of people, our staff included, they might not have even done online banking before. So meeting with someone virtually for a session was brand new. Virtual piece is much more difficult because we have to be much more prepared and on than ever before. So for me, I noticed, and I was talking to my colleagues about this too, we were running a lot of groups and I found it was exhausting. It wasn't quite like the camaraderie that we would have previously. So we relied on multiple people in the past to run the group. So basically, we'd have material, we'd have everyone reading it out. So it was almost as if the therapist could have a little bit of a break in that. I don't get that anymore. So it's me, basically, I'm the one doing it. So video sessions are also more exhausting, regardless of whether it's one-to-one or in groups. It's physically just hard on your body to be sitting in front of a screen all day. It's also hard on your body to just be sitting in that computer chair all day. Our eyes are tired from staring at the screen. Some people are noticing other physical impacts of sitting in a certain way all day. So we've had to modify what we're doing. So I think earlier on, we had a few months where we didn't have headsets. So I personally, when I'm at the office, I'll have headphones that I'll be using. And I was fine with that. But people were noticing sort of getting that stiff neck from either being on the phone all the time or just having a lot of technical difficulties. And these are things we never anticipated. These were largely on the go things that we learned. So if you are someone who is working from home, your boundaries have become much more difficult. I've been having this conversation with people even before pandemic. So you have people who are working from home and thinking, okay, I'm here, so I can also do some laundry and maybe I can throw some food in. And then they're coming and talking to me about how stressed out they are because they're basically doing the double duty. Not good. So it's important to maintain that work-home balance. So we've had so many additional negotiations to keep home and work separate. So that's questions like, are the kids in school that day? Is childcare available for them? Because I can't be both my job duty as well as the parent. Is my partner working from home? I know a lot of people who've worked in this field and it's one person is sitting in the car doing their session on the telephone while the wife is sitting at the kitchen table doing her stuff. And it's really hard to keep things confidential. So it's been a struggle for people. So also the thing is, are my dogs going to be disruptive and screaming at everything outside when I'm trying to have a session downstairs? That happens quite a bit and it's really disruptive. So also the thing about how do I keep things confidential for both my clients as well as my own personal life. Your safe place is now welcoming pain into it. So people don't typically come for therapy because they're doing really well. Our body holds on to a lot more than we know. So it's that whole idea you probably heard of, don't do anything in your bed other than sleep because your body starts to associate your bed with, eating, watching TV, reading, whatever. Very similar to if I'm bringing my therapy here into the house, I might come down to this room and start associating trauma with this room here. Our body knows a lot more than we actually remember, and we do have those reactions. Whereas in the past, I might be able to lock my door and walk away. I always would tell people the second my foot hit the pavement, I'm okay, this is Megan's time now. I'm no longer working. But the thing is, everything is very much blurred and we don't have that anymore. Working virtually and offsite has also created a lack of containment. So it's really important to have a separate space for your work, something that you can actually pack up when you're done for the day. So I have friends that have sort of had makeshift offices where it's literally at the kitchen table and then at 4 o'clock, they shut the computer, they turn off their phone, and they're done for the day. So unless you're on call, this is hopefully something that you're able to maintain. People who are working outside of the home have also had to take all sorts of precautions. So we're worried about getting sick ourselves. We're also worried about bringing something home and getting loved ones sick too, which goes into the whole constant stressor that we're dealing with. So how are we doing? Well, initially, not incredibly well, and some of us are still in this place. We're noticing more people experiencing signs of depression and anxiety. Basically, people are exhausted, overwhelmed, irritable, angry. Our lives have completely changed. We're no longer as active as we once were. We're not social. Our routines have been completely disrupted and dismantled. This is leading people to feeling depressed, right? A lot of people aren't good with change. We're also having a sense of danger due to constantly being inundated with everything COVID-19 related. Basically, our amygdala in our brain, which is the security guard in our brain, is in overdrive because it's constantly searching for danger. As such, our stress hormones have been in overdrive for well over a year. The anxiety is usually useful and activating in terms of getting us out of danger. So I always use the example of if I'm walking across the street and a dump truck is lumbering towards me, the amygdala is going to kick me into that fight or flight that's going to get me across the road. So it's really important in terms of keeping our species alive, as well as keeping me from getting hit by that truck. However, you can imagine if you were in that fight or flight all the time for the past year and a half, it's not great. So basically, the system is useful for getting us out of danger, but it's meant to be short-lived. So we weren't built to be this level of anxiety for this period of time. I really compare it to sitting in your driveway, your foot's on the gas, you're just spinning your wheels, but you're not going anywhere. You're basically just flooding your system. And that's very much similar to the way our system is constantly being flooded with cortisol, with adrenaline. Like, I don't need those things when I'm actually just sitting in my living room. The constant activation is also leading more and more of us to feeling burnt out. So like I said, we only need those chemicals for a short time, but we've got it all the time. So if anyone's ever had a strong sense of anxiety, you know that things you're not great at during that time are planning, organization, even any problem solving. Because the thing is, you don't need those things when you're experiencing high anxiety. Basically, all you need to do is get to safety. So that's why we're noticing that people are not good at those things right now. Everything about our lives is also being put through what I call the COVID filter, and it's making more work for everyone. It's weird because it's even, I'll be sitting at home watching TV and I'll see two characters sitting really close and I'm like, oh, you can't do that. And then I remember that I'm watching fiction and it's TV. So, I mean, if I'm looking at it that way, a lot of people are looking at it that way. So we anticipated it's going to be a few months, a few weeks, maybe, but here we are over a year and a half later and people are exhausted. We're built for short-term danger. We're missing our short-term escapes. We are in a long-term stress, which is not good. I'm also seeing people break down who have never broken down before. So people who are, in different roles, which I'll explain later, people are sharing more vulnerabilities and feeling stuff that they've never felt before. I've had people saying that, oh, I've gone to emerge because I thought I was dying. And they told me I was having an anxiety attack. So it's a lot of new stuff for a lot of people. So all of this particularly pertains to people who maybe they've never accessed services before, maybe they've never had like a significant mental health crisis. We have a group of people who they've never actually, like I mentioned with a person who might be going into emerge thinking that they're having a heart attack. They've never had these concerns before. So we're seeing people who have never had that issue. But we also look at the people who I wouldn't say a regular population, but people who maybe are more regular with accessing the services, they're also seeing their services are compromised. So you'll notice that there's businesses closed, services are being modified or online. Like not everyone has virtual capability. Not everyone even has a telephone, right? So when your services move from office to telephone or virtual, that's a significant barrier. They're also offering reduced hours. So the biggest thing about, there's a lot of reasons why our mental health is suffering, and not necessarily just with, like I mentioned routine a lot, but it's not necessarily just with, the fight or flight hormones. We also see a lot of people, the mob mentality and panic buying. So back in, I think it was like March, when I think the only thing on Facebook was jokes about people overbuying toilet paper and you're thinking, why are people doing that? Well, there's the mob mentality. There's also people are freaked out and people are trying to have some sort of sense of control. And, you know, maybe if I buy a whole box of toilet paper, like, I mean, a whole crate, maybe I'll feel like I have some sort of control where I didn't before. Maybe I'll feel a little bit more protected. It sounds a little ridiculous, but we were all doing it. There's also the isolation factor. So a big population right now, especially, kids aren't going to school. We need to understand that for kids and teenagers, the pandemic has actually represented a larger percentage of their lives than it has been for us. We've had a lot more life experience, and ideally, we have a lot more skills to manage. However, isolation is going to impact them a lot more than it would for adults. So we need to be really sensitive about this. We also need to be able to communicate these things in an appropriate way. There's also elderly isolation. So some people are more at risk and struggling with the reality versus the feelings of isolation. It's really cool actually around Christmas to see, you know, different people reaching out and, you know, creating Christmas cards for people who are living in like long-term care homes or things like that, getting like the whole iPad program where people were given iPads to actually connect a little bit more with their loved ones. The lack of in-person services has been huge as well. For some of my clients, the only social time that they would have would actually be coming in to either see me or somebody else on their mental health team. The biggest thing is also services that, like things like Tim Hortons, you're not allowed to sit and have coffee. And for some of my clients, that was the biggest part of their day, was actually just going and sitting and being able to interact with the general community because they didn't have anybody else. So, I mean, these are challenges that are coming up given everything being closed. Biggest thing is boredom. So I always joke, like, check in on your extroverted friends because they're not doing incredibly well. However, by this point in time, you know, the introverts like myself aren't doing as well either. I kind of joke that I'm like the family dog, like I want to go outside, but then I want to come in immediately. When we have too much empty space in our day, it's just as bad as overbooking ourselves. It's a good idea to make the best of an awful situation. So I'm trying really hard and I'm always telling people about the things I'm doing. So hopefully I can inspire someone else as well. So can you try to modify things to, like, let's say you were doing something in community, can you modify that to actually do it at home? So it's super cute because my husband does like a monthly wing night with his friends. So they'll literally just make wings and sit in the basement in their own separate basements and just have like a wing night and talk. I've been doing a lot of things with people I used to work with. So we do a lot of like virtual chats. We also do like game nights virtually. So we're really trying to make the best of it. And I can promise you, I did not love the idea of moving to virtual, but I've also understood that it's this or it's nothing, right? So people aren't coming over. We are basically consuming way too much media. We're consuming way too much news. I can't be saturated in news and media 24/7. I had to put boundaries in place. Basically, I would wake up in the morning and Google would let me know that COVID was still around, immediately providing me with statistics, what's happening, what people are saying about it. And this is all before I've even had my morning coffee. It's too much. So it's important to have a balance between being uninformed, so no news at all, and being oversaturated. Because the thing is, the more we're consuming these news, like, yeah, it's important to know things, but it's also making us a lot more stressed. Be aware also where your information is coming from. So is it accurate? Is it from a reputable source? I don't know the amount of times, and I'm not even referring to COVID, where something has been shared and it was an article from like 3 years ago. So just consider, like, is this something that's relative to me and is it important right now? We have so many added stressors right now. Our baseline for what caused us stress is much, much different. Some of us may feel like you're going from 0 to 100 in terms of your emotions. You might feel like a tiny little stressor is something that feels really significant now. The regular things we enjoyed before just aren't cutting it in terms of that stress relief. So it's important to really be aware of that so that we can work. It's that whole name it to tame it. If I name that I'm stressed, I can start to tame that. We worry a lot about our loved ones as well. So it's always important to text, stay connected. I mean, I know my family personally, we have like a family WhatsApp chat just to keep in touch. It's important to also check in with people on a regular basis. Having honest conversations about how you're doing, because that's, I mean, the biggest part of social support is just connecting to say, hey, yeah, I'm feeling those ways too. A lot of people are having financial issues during COVID. So you've seen small businesses either close or have to modify. People have been laid off. People are losing employment. We're seeing people who are working a lot. They're overtired, they're overworked. A lot of people are just trying to make ends meet by working multiple jobs. That's something that I've heard about a lot. So I mean, if that isn't burning the candle at both ends, right? People are also just working overtime because that's the nature of their business. So I mean, obviously working in healthcare, you know, a lot of people do overtime, double shifts. And I mean, it's hard on the system. We have a huge interruption in terms of our routine and schedule. As someone who really relies on a routine, March and April were not incredible for me because I had to revamp everything. We're not working out like we were. We're not moving our bodies like we were. Our sleeping has been thrown off. We can't do the things we previously did due to lockdown. I mean, the people who can't go to their gyms anymore, and that was like a regular thing, can't do it anymore. So we're not as social. Many of us are opting to cope in different ways. For me, it was really vital to create a new routine. So basically, I've just been sticking to routine as much as possible, even in little ways. So find small things you can look forward to each day. Maybe it's buying a coffee on the way into work, something like that. I can't go to dinner and a movie, so like my weekend plans have been largely dismantled. However, maybe I can order from a small business, I can order from a local restaurant and have a movie night. At least I can wear sweatpants, which is now my most favorite thing in the world. We have a lot of concerns about our health, which I mean is pretty much goes without saying, but we have excessive anxieties around that. So previously when I'd be working with clients experiencing anxiety, we would have a lot of conversations about real versus perceived threat. How can we check the evidence? You know, how can we challenge the cognitive distortions you're experiencing? You know, maybe the stuff that's going on, maybe it's not entirely accurate. I can't do this anymore because it's a very real threat for people. So my suggestions have moved towards what can you do now in this moment to make yourself feel safe, to make your loved ones feel safe? Consider what you need in terms of having a sense of safety. So I mean, it could be little things like having a bottle of hand sanitizer, making sure you have multiple masks available, making sure that, you know, we've been doing a lot of online ordering in terms of like curbside pickup, like whatever you need to do to have that sense of safety and stability, it's important to keep doing that. We also have a concern about the world on a larger basis. So, you know, what are things going to look like in a year from now? What are things going to look like, you know, for family across the world? Unfortunately, that's not something I control in this moment. So I've been focusing really on following guidelines. I can't control what's happening with other people, but I can control my own immediate actions. So I've just been, and I mean, the thing is, people want you to be really authentic with them. So when you're saying this to clients that, hey, I'm not doing incredibly well too, but this is how I'm managing, they really appreciate it. There's also a lack of understanding about how to care for mental health. So it's funny in my field, the amount of people that tell me, oh, like, you know, I'm not a big talker. I'm like, okay, well, probably going to have to start being a big talker because we need to talk about what's going on. So a lot of people haven't spent a lot of time thinking about what they need to care for their mental health. And they're at a significant loss when their usual things are cut out. So for people who are new to discussing mental health, it's a good idea to focus on creating health rather than treating mental health. So it's important also to know that accessing mental health services is not going to fix things. It's also not going to take away the uncomfortable feelings. It will, however, help you to develop some emotional agility, as well as healthy coping skills to help you move through life's challenges. So as someone who works in concurrent disorders, I couldn't create this presentation without also talking about all the additional ways that people are coping. So part of my role is working with people experiencing addiction issues. This population is also struggling based on a variety of reasons. So when I was talking earlier about our lack of ability to have organization, problem solving, and planning, this has been a contributing factor in people able to maintain their sobriety or maintain whatever addiction or mental health goals. So this is why people are relapsing. We're also seeing people who maybe haven't been involved in substance use or haven't been involved in, you know, drinking too much or gambling too much or gaming, et cetera, online shopping. These problems like dependent behavior has popped up for people who might have not coped in this way before. So basically people are going home, they're bored, People might be leaning towards even drinking more. So, oh, I'm home, I might as well have a few beers, or I'm at home, I might as well do this, this, and this. Whatever they need to do in order to get that instant gratification and that release of dopamine, which is that feel-good chemical that makes us all feel good even in the interim. Other people are, over shopping, maybe spending a lot of time gaming. You might notice, like, especially teenagers spending a lot of time in front of the computer, finding a lot of time in front of, like, using games. So I genuinely feel that people are coping to the best of their abilities. Like I said, when you know better, you do better. But people are having a really hard time. So it's important to acknowledge this and be sensitive. It's also important when you're looking at these kind of things and thinking, okay, maybe I am drinking too much, or maybe I am doing whatever it is too much. Just consider your own boundaries, your own goals. If you're looking at, usage of any kind, have you considered anything with moderation guidelines? So there are moderation guidelines around alcohol use. Have you considered any of that? Also consider the who, what, where, when, why, when you're experiencing an urge to do something. So, when I'm having the urge to make, my third Amazon purchase this week, I've got to think about that rather than actually following through with that. So in our program, like I said, we've had a lot of change over the past 13 months. So with this, the mental health team has been listening to the community and making changes on the go. So basically, if they see that there's something that people in the community, so like their clients are saying things, we're hearing things from other service providers, we've basically modified our services just kind of on the fly. Really, really earlier on, we were doing telephone work and managing all the challenges around this. So like I was saying previously, regular therapeutic tools weren't really translating well to telephone work. We couldn't see people or monitor certain symptoms. We then enrolled in OTN, which is basically our online service provider. It was brand new service for many people on the team. It was really challenging onboarding and fixing any technical issues we had. However, my team has been amazing in terms of rising to that occasion and just doing incredibly well. It's funny because people who are
Did it freeze?
Megan, are you there? One moment, folks. It seems like we have a little bit of technical difficulty. Megan's just going to sign back in.
I apologize. I heard a bunch of beeping in the background for the past 20 minutes, and then I just disappeared. So bear with me 1 second while I just share my screen again. Alrighty, can everybody hear me? Good, okay. So as much as it's been challenging, we've really done well. We're used to having people in our office space, but we've had to learn how to observe clients in a different way. It's harder to pick up body language, but we've been learning new ways to work with this. A lot of issues around depression and anxiety. So the team was noticing we were getting a lot of referrals for our mood and anxiety group. So rather than like having that wait list that was just going and going and going, they actually just created, we had, I think, 2 groups at one point in time. Now we have 6. So basically everyone is running at least 2 of those groups. We've also run another dialectical behavioral therapy group, which is basically, it's a very long wait list usually, but because that wait list kept growing, people were just like, okay, this is what we need and this is what we're going to start doing. So management was also looking at community need. We were hearing from a new population that we'd never heard from before. So as such, it was suggested that we start doing like an open community group. So we do have a group that's available for community members who've maybe never been a part of, the STEGH community before, but it's basically just like an online like drop-in group every Tuesday. So it's great that we're able to offer that. Another thing is my role specifically has changed. As of about October 2020, there was a need for services on site for staff who were struggling and needed someone to talk to. So it's not necessarily just a service in which we sit and talk about COVID for 50 minutes. That would probably bore me to tears. It's actually just about anything and everything. Everything about life has basically been more challenging. So we've had to actually address this. So that involves talking to someone about what's going on. I've actually really loved being able to meet and work with people that I didn't necessarily have the opportunity to do before. I've also been writing wellness emails for the hospital. So anyone who works at STEGH, maybe you read them, maybe you don't. It's been pretty well received. The counseling I offer for clients or for staff has been fantastic. So basically I've had 8 hours per week that I've able to connect with staff. So either people reach out and connect with me because they've read my, my messages online. Maybe they've been to my presentations that I've created. For the longest time, I didn't really feel like a healthcare worker because I'm a social worker. So I didn't have that skill set. So it was really nice for me to be able to actually do something for staff and give back. So I really liked that. So enough about the bad stuff. What can we do to actually move forward? So a big thing is about calming our body down. If we're flooded with stress hormones, we actually need to work to make ourselves more settled. So some people choose yoga. I'm not a huge yoga fan, but a lot of people love it. Also, progressive muscle relaxation is something that I'm basically pushing to everyone in my life. If you don't know what that term is, I encourage you to look it up. Lots of videos out there. It's also a good idea to do what they call completing the stress response. So basically animals, whenever they are threatened, they have this thing where they'll shake their body out to metabolize the stress that they're experiencing. So Dr. Adam Levine, the singer of Maroon 5 created this book, not him. I say that every single time. Dr. Peter Levine, he's a doctor. He's the one you want to look to. He basically saw animals shaking after they had a fight. And it was basically a way of sort of unfreezing. So it's a natural response for humans to just go into that freeze mode. So if we're metabolizing it out, it can actually help us to get through that stressor. So that's why people are always talking about activity, mobilize your body in some way. Do you want to dance? Do you want to go for a run? What do you want to do, to get that stressor out? Another thing is connecting with your support system. Can you connect with someone in your home environment? Can you try out video chatting? We're social creatures and we cannot exist in isolation from others. A big part of the work I do involves the rapport that I have with my clients. Other things are focusing on things that you can actually control in your life. So try creating a new routine for yourself. We in the mental health field love to push gratitude, and I'm going to do it again now. Basically try to find little things in your life that you can do to bring happiness in your day. If you can't find your own happiness, help someone else find it. So how can you help someone else create their own joy? When I'm having a rough time, the work I do with staff and clients has been really important for me in order to feel more grounded. Also the self-compassion piece. So cut yourself some slack. If you could be curious about just looking into why it is you're feeling the way you're feeling, that's a good idea. Also removing the autopilot and using some mindfulness. So just kind of being observant of your thoughts. So consider your mind to be like the watchtower and just watch the thoughts as they come through. Also, my thing is trying to avoid the negativity snowball. So monitor your thoughts. Are they starting to spin in the negative direction? So skill development. My biggest thing is about creating a healthy mind. So normally we do this by going to therapy, reading self-help material, or talking to others. Understand your emotions, so including the uncomfortable ones. So that means you have to talk about it. Question your thoughts and beliefs. Why is it that I feel the way I feel? Why am I responding right now the way I'm responding? Also about creating and maintaining healthy boundaries. I talked a lot earlier about how everything like boundary lines have largely been blurred, but the thing is you can't fill from an empty cup. So consider what your boundaries are now and whether they need adjusting. Are you committing too much to other people or committing too much to your job? Also limiting your time on social media. Basically, for whatever reason, I love to read the comments on things. Yeah, you're gonna wanna stop doing that because it's really bad. We don't wanna get to that space. And anyone who's read the comments knows exactly what I'm talking about. Self-compassion. Most of us aren't really good at things the first time. Cut yourself some slack. Consider the warning label. So warning labels on anything, they exist because someone has done that. So someone didn't know that well and they did that thing. So now we have that warning label. Life didn't come with an instruction manual. So it's important to consider the fact that you're not going to do things right the first time. We live and we learn. For example, when you're doing a presentation and your internet cuts out, it's a new thing. We're adapting. Radical acceptance is really big too. So I tend to use the term like it is what it is. When I went to school, it sure wasn't to sit in front of a computer and talk to someone virtually. I even hate talking on the phone, right? But I do it. I'd love to be able to have people over. I'd love to be able to sit on a patio and just, enjoy the beautiful weather. That's not going to happen. So ruminating over this is only going to contribute to my negativity snowball. So that's meaning, like I always joke about how it's, I might start the day and I might have some negative thoughts, which lead to more negative thoughts, which lead to this negative snowball rolling downhill, quickly picking up more negativity as I go. So when I notice my thoughts are tipping in the negative direction, I turn things around. So when I know that I can't solve the problem right now, radical acceptance allows me to say that it is what it is. So rather than prolonging my suffering, it doesn't mean I don't wish things weren't different. It just means I can't change things right now, but I can focus on my mood. So that's actually like a technique from dialectical behavioral therapy. So use it. I think this is the last piece. So if you are concerned, if you're looking for resources yourself, we do actually have groups and individual counseling at St. Thomas Elgin General Hospital. It's usually just a physician referral to get through to there. Homewood is also offering staff support in terms of employee assistance programming. So give them a call. There's usually information all over the hospital. I'm also available to talk to staff as needed in my peer support role. So it's really just like sending me an email, giving me a call, whatnot, if you're a STEGH staff. If you're in crisis, I'm always encouraging people to reach out to the Canadian Mental Health Association. They're actually available right on site at STEGH, as well as contacting Reach Out. Reach Out is they're 24/7. They're available for you regardless of what you're looking for. So with those of you who have benefits for therapy, I've directed a lot of people to Psychology Today. So you'll notice that last little bit. Psychology Today is basically, they have, oh my gosh, I think thousands of therapists with a variety of different techniques, whatever you're looking for. You can be very specific in your search saying who you're looking for, and it's available. And the great thing about now doing virtual is, if there's a therapist that you'd really click with in Toronto, go ahead and do that. So yeah, so that is basically what I have for you guys. So thank you so much for participating. Now it's the question and answer portion.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Megan. So if any of you have questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask her.
Megan.
Hi, Megan.
Hello.
I'm dealing with cancer and I have been since July. And with everything going on, it is very depressing for me.
Yeah.
I can't have people go with me to the hospital or appointments. And yeah, it's very disappointing and it's very, very depressing, and it causes a lot of stress on me.
Yeah. Yeah, I can understand that's really difficult. I'm sorry to hear that.
I don't know how to deal with the stress and the anxiety. And I'm on Celexa and it doesn't seem like it's helping.
I think it's a good idea to look at coping from like a more of a holistic kind of view. So maybe you had coping skills in the past that were helping. And I mean, granted, you know, COVID and having a cancer diagnosis adds a really difficult layer on there as well. But I mean, seeing maybe what has worked in the past in terms of when you're having a rough go, how could you modify that for right now? I think like, yeah, I mean, I've certainly been into hospital, and it really sucks to not bring, you know, my husband with me to hold my hand, but you know, it's, I have to do what I have to do, right? So I think it's really important to focus on the coping skills, like what you're doing around then to manage. So basically using all of like the positive self-talk, the healthy self-talk, making sure that your coping skills across your life are in place. Also social support. Like, do you have social support in your life? And if you don't, there's a lot of opportunities out there where you can actually get connected. I think what you're feeling though, like, I would understand, you know, feeling the uncomfortable emotions that you're feeling. That totally makes sense.
Yeah, it's been very hard for me. And yesterday, they told me that I had residual cancer tumor and they need to do surgery again because they left a tumor behind.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry.
So it's a lot of crying and a lot of nervous breakdowns,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to cope, but it's really hard. You know, I've been going through this treatment since July. You know, I had my surgery back in July, and it just feels like stuff keeps coming up and coming up and coming up.
Yeah. Yeah, I can get that. It sounds like it might be beneficial to connect with someone like a professional resource, just to, you know, sometimes it helps to get like a different insight. Like, I mean, I'd love to be able to say, yep, you know, do this, this, and this, and, you know, you're right back out there. But it might be a good idea about like, you know, explaining things a little further, and then they could offer some suggestions and, you know, working back and forth in terms of managing through this.
Okay, yeah, I think I'm going to talk to my cancer doctor because
Yeah.
it's really a weight on me, and it's really causing a lot of stress. And my body, I can feel it reacting to it all.
Which I mean makes sense, right? You know, our physical self is so much connected to our mental health. But if you're in the Elgin County area, like we certainly accept referrals for counseling. So, I mean, even getting involved in like our mood and anxiety group, like you have a lot of anxiety based on a very real thing. So it's a good idea to develop some skills around that.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You guys are quiet. Did I just answer all of the questions or?
I actually have a question, Megan.
Okay.
So my mom is currently in hospital in London.
Okay.
She has many, many health issues.
Okay.
And I'm trying to support her as best as I can. She lives in the same home as I do. Like my family and I, we all have a house. Mom has a separate apartment. So we're disrupted because I was caring for her before she went in the hospital. So I'm kind of lost.
Yeah.
And I'm either filling my time to the absolute minute or I'm zoning out on my phone,
Okay.
playing games or watching Netflix. But I guess my question is, do you have any advice on how to best support her while not being able to actually go to the hospital? Because I keep hearing responses from some of the incredible team at the hospital that have you heard from this part of her team? And they're like, well, hold on. How long has she been in this situation? And why didn't this part of the support network contact you already? So I'm wondering if you have any insider expertise of ways that I can advocate for her, connections that I can make to be able to stay in touch more with her team.
Okay. Well, luckily I actually did work at LHSC, so I might have a little bit better of an insight. First thing I would say, like, you know, if you're either filling all of your time or you're feeling like you're blanking out, sounds like you need to support yourself first, right? Like, I think as the helper, we feel like we need to help others to the exclusion of ourselves. But the thing is, like, I always tell my clients, or I tell my friends, I tell everybody this: if you're on an airplane and, you know, you're putting on the oxygen mask, you're going to put yours on first because you don't have any ability to care for anybody else until we've cared for ourselves. So, you know, she'd probably appreciate, like, yes, she's in the hospital, but she'd appreciate you being able to just kind of have a break and rest yourself, right? So the skills you would have developed anywhere else in your life, it's time to put those into place. In terms of, getting your mom care, you said it was your mom, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of getting your mom care, I know that there's a lot of different services at LHSC. I know the Canadian Mental Health Association is currently working there. I don't think I know the team lead there at this point in time, but even connecting with the main office for CMHA to see what is available. Also seeing if there would be a social worker on her unit, connecting with them. So they would have better insight in terms of who they could connect you specifically with. The kind of case or the kind of work that they do is more casework. So they'd be able to connect with services, and who knows, like I want to say it's been like 6-7 years since I've actually worked there, which now that I say that out loud, that's a long time, but it's been a while since I've worked there. So chances are they've had new funding and new programming, and it's weird because even when I was in ATCM, like for years, people didn't know the program was there, right? So unless you ask about specific services, they might not know what it is. So just ask that social worker questions.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Oh, we've got a hand. Tanya.
I guess that's me.
Yes.
So my name is Tanya. I want to start, Megan, by saying I really appreciate some of the things you've shared over the last 45 minutes or 50 minutes or so. It's really validating to hear that we're not the only people struggling, that other people feel this way. So I'm wondering if maybe you can speak to what advice you might give, or what you might say, or what we could say perhaps to someone in our life we know is struggling, but is maybe hesitant to reach out for support. They might, feel some of that stigma that you were talking about, might not want to engage in services, but, as a loved one, we see that they're struggling. We just want to be able to give them the right nudge in the right direction. Any, tips you have for that?
I think it's largely about being very authentic with people. Like, it's funny because when clients come into my office, they often think that they're brand new to experiencing this. And it's funny because someone will come in and they'll be experiencing anxiety, and, I'll say, oh, try this, this, and this. And they're thinking I just read that in a textbook. It's like, no, I've been doing that for the last X amount of years to manage my own sort of mental health and my own anxiety. So just normalizing that, yeah, you know what, like mental health is one half of your being. You don't get to say that you don't have any concerns with it just because you've been uncomfortable, or just because you've never experienced it in the past. I was thinking a lot about the kind of language we use. So maybe we can start referring to it as social support, right? Because really the work I'm doing with people is I'm talking to them all day, which it's funny because being super chatty in elementary school and being told I will never have a job that I talk to people all day. Well, guess what? I do now. So joke's on you. So, I mean, referring to it as social support is a good idea too, right? Like that whole thing about, we're humans. We can't exist without other people. And sometimes you need someone to run things through just in order to give you some different perspective in your life. Does that help?
It sure does. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there anyone else who has any questions for Megan? All right, if that's it, I'll now turn it back over to STEGH Foundation Board President Judy Thorner to close us out.
Megan, thank you for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us this evening. Your presentation exceeded expectations, and I know everyone here found your STEGH talk very informative. Every single one of us has been impacted with the stress and demands of the pandemic in one way or another, and it's important to know how to support our loved ones and the resources we have access to. The information you have shared this evening is a great reminder to be kind, patient, and supportive to those around you. STEGH Talks is a series of presentations that the Foundation will be hosting every 2 months. Please watch for future announcements as we work hard to confirm our schedule. And if you have any program suggestions for topics of interest to you and your family, please let us know. Have a great evening, everyone, and thank you.